The following program contains views that are not those of WVTC, iNetworks Communications, their subsidiaries, affiliates, or financial supporters.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Creating a Christ-Like Mind. It's me, Trinity, and
it's me, Kiki.
So I'm so excited for today. First of all, before we dive into this episode, thank you to WBTC and thank you to our amazing church and our amazing bishop and first lady at New Gideon Missionary Baptist Church, located 1025 East on 79th Street. So on today, we're going to be talking about role models. So in this episode is role models and the paths we follow. And this is so important because role models shape the youth and the youth shape our future. So let's dive into this.
So this conversation is not about perfection or celebrities or status. It's about exposure and modeling another way. When people consistently see a healthier path lived out, they begin to believe that something different is possible for them.
Amen to that. So as we move on, the importance of showing different paths. One of the greatest forms, and before we dive into this is a faith-based space dedicated to violence prevention, healing communities, shaping futures, and this is rooted in purpose, not pain. So one of the greatest forms of violence prevention is exposure, and this is the importance of showing different paths. When the youth only see one path, they only see one definition of strength, one definition of success. They assume that is the only option. And so this here is the question that we want to ask is, how do we see this manifesting in the youth? How do we see the youth only choosing one path because that's the only thing that they see?
I started diving in, and my answer was social media, and how there is this contact of like only exposing what's cool or what's popular, like right now, baddies and Twitch and those things, and on those in that form of media, you see a lot of violence, you see a lot of domestic violence and negative relationships. So once you constantly see those things, and it's in video games as well, and it's like it's so quick to pull out our phones and record the negative, but when it's time to record something great or something positive, we don't actually get to see it, or it's only a small glimpse of that. So when I think about how it's manifesting in our youth is what they're always seeing, right? And that's being on social media and being in these environments where that is the prominent view of seeing those things. Where it's social media, but in our urban communities, right? In our Black and brown, communities where even in the news and even in these places where it's always been like, oh, Black people are bad or this is bad, or violence happens in those places. So we always see the negative, and when we look at the news, there's not a lot of positive things on the news. It's not called good news, it's called news. So you get to see those things places. There is what came up for me when I saw that question when you sent it to me.
Totally. For me, I feel like I definitely agree with the topic of urban communities. I think that we see the youth only taking one path, most prominently in areas where there are less resources, where the parents are more stretched thin. Because what happens is the world is painting a path for the kids, and so the kids just follow the path that's prominent, And when we think about when you brought up social media, I started to think about the music. And so a lot of the young boys who grew up in urban communities, the only way for success that they see is through music. Like they see boys that are rappers and they like, oh, let me go get in the studio. But what a lot of them fail to realize, because a lot of the elders fail to speak about it, is that the people who make it out of these urban communities, they do it with God, And so when we're showing different paths, even that in itself is a path to show. Like, yeah, you can be successful through music, but you're not going to do it through your own power. It's going to be days where you hit your knees and pray, you know.
Mhm.
And even when I'm thinking back to a previous episode, we talked about G Herbo, and I watched one of his like podcasts where he talked about his relationship with God, but in his music he don't speak about that, you know. So to exposure, like exposing the background of these paths that look successful, but God is literally at the foundation.
Yeah, and I love you brought that up too, and it goes back to what we see, right? What is allowed to be screamed and what is broadcast to us, right?
Yeah.
And when you think about it, there's a control factor and there's a system factor. What do we want these kids to see? What do we navigate? And I think a lot of people are not using parent control systems. I remember growing up, we used to have like codes on the TV where you had to ask your parents to get the code to watch certain things, and the ratings of rated R and PG-13. And I don't think that dynamic exists anymore. It's just because we have so much access to finding these things, and it's not limited, and there's no guide of how do we manage this and how do we control what our children see. And it's like it's a lot of being jeopardized by, because I like how you said our parents are being stretched in, our leaders are being stretched in. So if they're focused on making sure there's food and lights and gas in the house, how are they being able to monitor what our kids watch and what they see, because they're not always present or at home at the time. So it's getting back to the point of being able to monitor what our kids see and what does that look like, how we do that, right? I remember we only had 30, like sleep timer was on. Like we had a certain amount of time to watch TV, and we had a certain amount, it was scheduled and routine. And I feel like that's a part of how we manage our youth and our adolescents and how they receive and see role models, because what they see is what you do. And that brings to the point, if it is only explained examples of power that they see are loud, aggressive, reckless, and emotional numbness, violence becomes normalized, not because they desire to be violent, but because they never see something shown as an alternative. And then there's some questions here. Showing different paths communicates something powerful. You can be strong and gentle. You can be respected without being feared, and you can be influential without being distracted, like being distracted. From a mental health perspective, the brain learns through observation. What is modeled becomes familiar, and what is familiar often feels safe. Even when it's unhealthy, exposure creates choice, and choice interrupts the cycle of harm.
Yeah, I love that. I think the last thing was so heavy because when we expose these kids to different paths, we actually give them the ability to make a choice that they never knew they had before. And that's the most important part. A lot of times we think the kids, and we judge them like, well, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing this? A lot of them don't know that that's an option for them because they've never seen it. So that point about how exposure creates choice, like that's such a heavy statement. Moving on to our next point, we talk about what role models really are. And a role model isn't someone that's just successful. A role model is someone it's someone whose life answers questions. And I love that so much because people don't learn through talking. Like we can sit and chat all the time, but what we model when we turn off these cameras and when we move through our everyday life, that is what is going to be informative. We can sit and say like, oh, be slow to anger, but if we go off the camera and we crashing out on everybody,
how is that modeling?
It's not helpful.
Yeah.
And so a role model is someone whose life answers questions. Like the way that you navigate, it should be creating clarity for the people who are observing you. Because young people are subconsciously asking, as they grow up and as they, navigate their choices, they're asking themselves, how do I handle anger? How do I respond when I'm disrespected? What does womanhood or manhood really look like? Who am I allowed to be? And so as as the village. Like we're getting older and we're seeing the issues and the problems. And so we are becoming the village. We are becoming the pillars and the people who are to be leaned on. And so when we look at these questions, the way that you choose to navigate this stuff is what's going to leave something behind for the next person who needs a model, who needs to make a choice inside of themselves of how do I handle anger. So um I love this next talking point. Did you have something you want to add right there?
Yeah. So role models answer these questions throughout their behaviors, not just their words. As leaders, mentors, parents, and community members, we must be conscious of the way we model what we are creating, even in the hardest days. People are watching how we regulate, how we apologize, how we cover, and how we love. And when I wrote that, I was thinking about how um you gotta show up even when the lights off. Like even when you think nobody's watching, they're watching, and they're not watching to see exactly what you do, but how you do it. And that's my auntie Bonnie used to say that all the time. It's not what you do, it's how you do it. And people watching you, and you have to be able to show up even when you don't think people are watching you.
Definitely. So, talking point here is as we navigate being leaders, like you said, we must be conscious of the model we are creating. So, what things do you do intentionally to make sure you are perceived as accurately as possible?
I start with prayer.
Okay.
I think that when you open your eyes in the morning, you give God back his day. Like, I seek thee the kingdom of heaven first, and all things else will follow me. So when I get up in the morning, I'm like, God, this is your day. I give it back to you. Order my steps. Order my allow my tongue to speak positivity. Like I'm literally giving myself back to him so that he can navigate me throughout the day. And I think that's a part of being a role model, is because we're not in control. God is. And when we make that the foundation, and the primary goal is what my life should look like, what God wants it to look like, allow it to align with your will and your purpose, then the modeling happens. Because my role model, and we'll talk about this later, is my role model is in scripture, right? I'm navigating through scripture, I'm navigating through the word, being Christ-like. That's just creating the Christ-like mind. So I want my mind to be Christ-like so that I can show up as a role model. And when asking that question, I thought about my role models and how I reflect on them. So I got a little shout out for y'all. But my first role model was my cousin Shuggy. Her name is Venicia.
I also want to answer
Okay, cool. Go ahead. Sorry.
So like when I think about navigating things intentionally to make sure that you are, reflecting a good model. Like you said, I definitely agree with you about giving the day back to God and allowing him to navigate you. But I also think about creating intimacy in my relationships to let people know that this is a safe space and, a safe place that you can confide in. I'm a person that what's the word I'm looking for? I advocate for people, and make sure that people's voices feel heard. If it's something that they might not want to take to the top of the table, like you tell me, let's go talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the little things that, as you're modeling, the importance of being a model is that intimacy in a relationship, where letting a person know that they can trust you and they can lean on you, so that when tough times do come, you're a person that they come and talk to.
Yeah, for sure. I love that, and it gives that we used this word earlier today, vulnerability.
Oh yeah.
And being accepted and being consistent and available. That makes a good role model, and that makes you the pillar to want to be able to somebody to come back to you and say, advocate for me, help me advocate for myself, teach me how to advocate. And we learn that through our being a leader and being a role model too.
I'm excited to hear this.
Yeah, so back to my reflection of like my first role models. Of course, it's my grandma, but I haven't got to the age yet of like actually like using those tools yet. But I know, and I thought about as a teenager and as a young adult who I looked up to, and my first role model was my cousin Shuggy. And everybody loved her. She was super sweet, a little feisty, and she taught me how to be a teenage girl, and while being still true to myself too. So even now, she continues to show up as to show up as a role model to me of how to be a woman and how to handle my things emotional and how to navigate life trials. She also models emotional honesty, whether it's emotional suppression. Like, she was the first young woman to experience a lot of trials that when you are a teenager, you like, girl, what? This your first breakup? This your first this, your first that? And even though she's not too much older than me, she's old enough to navigate through that and was able to teach me in a process of how to manage those feelings and manage those emotions. So that was my first role model of how to deal with my emotions. And then as I grown, my role models have like changed, like in ministry, like in seeking leadership. Like I always, Bishop is my role model all the time. Like when it comes to like anything about God and anything about leadership and navigating people, he shows me how to do that every day. How to talk to people, how to not talk to people sometimes, because he a little feisty too. Our Bishop can be a little feisty too, but it's all out of love and service. And he teaches me the definition of how to love people every day and also giving that back to God. That's where I got that from. It's like always seek God first, like because he's doing that in his leadership process. So that's a role model. And as I moving more into ministry, I look up to Jazz and how she navigates leadership with the Emmanuel Baptist District, and that she's setting the tone of, okay, this is how Kingdom Kids is. How can navigate through Kingdom Kids and be a leader over that. So as you transition to these different sectors of our lives, you introduce more role models because every role model is good at something or is predominantly great at this thing that you can learn from. So that's my reflection about that. Any role models that you've been looking up to, or
I definitely agree with you when you said that your role models are biblical. I take that to heart a lot. I think that the path that I'm walking, I'm kind of like pulling it out of my head, if that makes sense. Like I don't feel like I've really seen someone go ahead of me in the way that I'm walking because of the variety of the things that I do. Like I'm 19, I trade stocks, I run a clothing brand. I'm also getting called to ministry. And so I don't really feel like I've seen someone walk this path. And like you said, there are people who are great at things. So, in particular areas, I definitely pull from people, but I feel like with a lot of my walk, I'm just like pulling it out of my head.
Yeah.
So we talking about here, like that was a really great transition into the biblical examples of role models because God sends role models, and the Bible makes it clear that God uses people to guide people. And Moses was sent to lead people. Moses is a character in Exodus, in case anybody is new. Moses is a character in Exodus, and he was sent to lead people who had only known oppression. Moses is who said, "Let my people go." So to experience freedom, it was mandatory that they trust God, and they needed faith and trust. They needed to see faith and trust modeled before they could live it. And so Moses modeled this. How did Moses model this? He was a person who had his own insecurities, but he put that aside to answer the call that God was calling him to. So that's what it looks like to be a role model. And also, David was a shepherd before he was a king. This showed that leadership doesn't start with power, but it starts with responsibility. And this is also making me think of a scripture that says that whoever wants to be highest must also be servant to all. And then here I have a point for Esther, and I'm going to glaze over this because Kiki dives deep into Esther. I love Esther's leadership, and we're actually getting ready to do an Esther fast. We're going to talk about all of this. But so Esther, what I love about her is that she modeled courage for people who learn silence as survival. And so she spoke out against the genocide of the Jews. And so with her breaking silence, she saved people. And Paul is a character in the Bible who I absolutely love. He openly said, "Follow me as I follow Christ." And that is literally what it means to be a Christ-like leader. We are all like human and we make mistakes and we bump our heads, but what our bishop always tells us, keep the faith, keep the focus, and keep following. So if you're doing that, that makes you fit to be a model. And that's something that I'm having to sit with because it's a lot of, I feel like I'm being called higher, And as I'm being called higher, I question whether I'm fit to be a model. But what I'm learning about God is that none of us is fit to be a model. You're going to be fit to be a model because of what He told you to do and your obedience to it. That's it. It's nothing that you can do that can make you more fit to do what God is calling you to do other than obey Him. That's it. And so that's something heavy that I'm having to sit with. And I absolutely love Paul because he says, follow me as I follow Christ. That's the charge. And as I close this up, God didn't just give commandments, He gave examples. So in the Bible, there are people that you can study and analyze how they interacted with Christ, analyze how they interacted with other people, analyze how they asked God questions. We don't talk, everybody don't want to talk about that, the fact that you can't ask God questions when you don't understand. You just, it's a heart posture that you must hold to do that, though. And as Jesus came to earth, He was literally the ultimate role model. He showed us how to respond without violence, how to stand firm without domination, and how to, wow, that's so good, as I said out loud, how to stand firm without domination. I think a lot of times leaders don't know how to make space for other people. Like Jesus, He was not here to dominate. He was here to lead and teach you. And oh my Lord, like follow Him.
This is not a monarchy.
Yes, like not a dictatorship.
Not a dictatorship. And as we think about that, and like last week we talked about leadership and the hierarchies and being a pillar of the community, that's just the foundation of where we are going, right? And we have to be able to follow Christ and follow Jesus to make sure that we're leading people to righteousness.
Yeah.
Because there, like we said, there's negative role models and there's negative things that's out here that's leading you a path to the enemy. Yeah. So you have to have discernment as a role model as well. So even in that, like if you following Jesus, if that person is following and modeling Jesus Christ, that's what you need to be doing.
Yes, I love that you said that because you brought up something for me that it came up last night as I was writing all this. There are a lot of people who want to step into those role model positions because they want to fill the gap of what they see happening. But truth be told, what makes you fit to be a model is God. Like, it's not your own wisdom. It's not your own experiences. It's not what you didn't learn. It's not what you didn't see. It's the fact that people can follow you as you follow Christ. That's it. That's the only thing that makes you fit to be a model. I don't even know who that was for, but
Amen.
I think that as we do ministry, a big part of it is to raise people's level of conviction. That's something that happens to me every time I
crack open the Bible.
Yes. Okay. I want to close out this part real quick. Is the big thing that Jesus taught us also was how to love without losing authority. And God knows that people learn best by watching, so He sends role models. All right.
Amen. So we're going to dive deeper into Esther, her courage, her fasting, and her alignment. Esther stands out as a powerful role model because of her courage and not her impulsiveness to react.
Yeah.
And it was aligned. She did not rush into action fueled by fear. She paused. Yeah. She fasted, she prayed, and she gathered the community. And I think I love Esther. And it is, we'll get there. But before Esther ever spoke to the king, she understood that inner alignment must come before outward courage. Esther 4:16, go gather all the Jews and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, day or night. I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king. So in that moment, she knew that there was something that caused fear. There was something that needed her courage, but she didn't go out and just immediately do things. And I think as a role model and as a leader, we see issues and problems and things that we want to change, right? And we immediately want to hop on it. Like, let's lock in, let's do it, right? But she paused and she took it to God. And fasting, we know it's fasting and praying. It's not just stopping eating and drinking. It's literally I'm fasting and praying. I'm listening for God's words. I'm trying to hear something. I'm getting clarity so that I know how to use my courage and be bold and courageous to get the job done, right? And Esther shows us this. And Esther was facing possible death. And the weight of responsibility and trauma of representing of an entire people, like the community. From a mental health standpoint, it is overwhelming. Fasting is not a punishment. It is regulating and clarity and surrendering.
Yeah.
So when you're in this midst of like chaos, and that's what our communities are in right now, chaos, it's trauma. When we talk about gun violence and we talk about negativity, yes, it starts in media, but then those psychological needs not being met and the financial needs not being met, that causes chaos. There's lack of jobs, there's lack of commitment and availability and trust, and people are scared to be vulnerable because I gotta be hard, I gotta be masculine, I gotta be tough, I gotta keep a straight face because I'm always under attack or I'm always under pressure. And that's what our community is in. Like, people just don't pick up a gun for safety, they pick it up because of fear. And when you're under fear, you don't know what you're going to do.
Yeah.
But Esther teaches us to pause and talk to God and rely on what his knowledge is, and surrender for the clarity. And not after she does that, fasting allows Esther to quiet fear, um, divine impulse, regulate emotional overwhelmness, shift from survival into purpose mode, hear God clearly before acting. Esther did not mirror violence. She did not react emotionally. She did not seek revenge. She chose wisdom, timing, and faith. Ecclesiastes 3 and 7 says, "A time to be silent and there's a time to speak."
Yes. Before we move on from that, I think that that's definitely a tool that is transformational. Is that pause? I think, like you said, a lot of the violence that's happening in the community, it comes from a place of impulse. And so when we charge y'all to fast, like the people, anybody who's watching this can do it as to fast. As you get that charge to fast, it's clarity that comes with that. And also, the importance of fasting is to disconnect from the flesh. And every time we talk about this, me and Kiki always like talk about the importance of that disconnect from the flesh, because it's to strengthen your spirit. And that's how God connects with you, through soul and spirit. And I think that, we have normalized satisfying the flesh and worshiping the flesh and giving the flesh what it wants. But for you to love God, it's certain things that you are going to have to like step back from. And fasting is going to help you notice what those things are.
Yeah, and I like that you put the word want, what our flesh wants. What do we need? And we all like, and that's part of why violence happens, is because we want something, and we so greedy to what's been exposed to us that we want it so bad, and our needs,
Right.
like, let's meet the need of just having emotional regulation and our nervous system lining up and creating safety and creating communication and effectively. That's the need. But the wants of wanting the new Jordans and wanting to be the best version of myself because I'm this cool and I get this many views and this many people on my tip or whatever, you know what I'm saying? But in reality, the needs is where God meets us. He meets us in our need. And Esther, she models healing leadership, knowing knowing when to be silent and knowing when to survive, and when courage requires her voice. So sometimes we as leaders, or I'm gonna speak on me, right? There's a lot of things I want to change in the places that I show up and be in. And sometimes I hop right in and be like, okay, this needs to happen. But when I don't pause and think about it and ask God, what do you want me to do? It creates more chaos. But when I pause and I be like, oh, I'm just gonna give this to the Lord, and he automatic, like, sometimes it's suddenly he be like, okay, this is what you need to do. So it's always, I always say, take back and look at the bigger picture and then zoom in. We got to see the whole thing. How is this interacting? How is this going to, like, even our podcast, right? This is just a snippet of what can happen in the community, right? You watching this, like being a role model. Every episode is leading you to have a Christ-like mind, but also helping the violence to prevent violence, and sharing that and navigating. So every seed you plant is just a way not only to give God the glory, but to heal our community as well.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Very heavy statement. And so as we keep moving forward, how the lack of positive role models normalizes violence is our next point. And because violence doesn't always start as cruelty, oftentimes it starts as the normalization of non-Christ-like behaviors. What does that mean? This looks like normalizing being fast to anger. And you know that those it's the little things that are going to lead to those big behaviors of violence, because this is something we've talked about in previous episodes. Like these kids that go and pick up the gun, that's not the first like sign. Like that's a there were precursors. There were things that happened before that. And so if anger is the only emotion model, anger becomes a language. If aggression is rewarded, aggression becomes identity. If silence is survival, then emotional shutdown looks like strength. And so a lot of these kids that struggle with that are struggling with letting go of certain like strongholds, like when I think about kids who struggle with addiction and stuff like that, it's suppressing this. Like this is what's being suppressed. They come from environments where anger is the only emotion model. Nobody has ever shown them vulnerability for them to know that that is safe and for them to know what it looks like. And aggression is something that's obviously shown, and nobody shows them an alternative. And that's even like diving into the importance of role models. We gotta start showing them an alternative. And so without healthy examples, these kinds of behaviors, they stop looking extreme and start looking normal. And this is why communities without visible, consistent role models often struggle. Not because people are bad, but because they're imitating what they've seen work. And that was, oh my gosh, like that.
Oh, that's scary. That's scary,
and
though.
This is actually a talking point here. Like, what is an example of a behavior that's not generally Christ-like, but it has been normalized as communities are doing what they have seen work?
Manipulation.
Elaborate.
So when I think about manipulation in our community is provide, like, we know that the end goal is maybe the house, the car, the nice things, but we use drugs and gangs and all these things to get it, right? And it's been a systematic issue, like it crack in the 80s, right? You know what I'm saying? That was the big thing, but the government used that too. Now we can police more, and we can do. It's a manipulation tactic to still put people prison the pipeline, school. Like, you're gonna go to school. This is the way how school is set up. All these things is manipulating the mind to believe and have control over how the system navigates people, like food stamps and all these things that keeps us in a box, not expanding, not making sure that we have limitless thought process. So it's a manipulation and control issue that is successful in one way, right? Like, you could get your food, you could get your healthcare and things like that. And some people grow from it or transition out of public aid and things like that. But some people are hundreds and years old still on public aid because it trapped them. And saying that both we talked about this on the other episode too, is when there's a 2-parent household versus a single parent household, and a male can't be in the household because they can't get government assistance for it. That's a manipulation tactic to say that your family isn't stable, right? And it continues to drop different seeds. It works for the government system, but then we suffer at the end. It's a tactic of oppression that keeps constantly happening. I hope I understand. I know that was a lot of word vomit, but it makes sense in the way of, like, it's a system issue, and it's always been a system issue. And it keeps us in a box, and it keeps our mind in the box, and keeps us trapped that we got to kill, steal, and deceive to get the things that we need. And it works, but that's not godly. And don't know, I really, even me sometimes, sometimes the narrow path does feel like it takes long, and then you gotta, but it is, it's not about how fast you get it. It's that it's the quality in which you get it in. And I think we so quick, we want microwave blessings all the time. And sometimes we need the chef blessing. We need that 5-course meal. Let them cook.
Slow cook blessing.
Yes.
Hot blessing.
Right. Like, let God cook. Let him cook over your life for real, because what his meal that he prepares for us,
5 courses.
Man.
Yeah, oh my God, like you took the words right out of my mouth. I would have went behind you and answered the question, but you literally hit every point. And what came up for me, I thought about sustainability. You know, when people are doing what they see work, they see it happening in real time, but I think it's rarely discussed the aftermath. And so when I think about people who took a certain route, the effects of it don't usually hit them until they reach that old age. You know, people who have been getting their income illegally throughout their whole life, once they get older and they need government assistance, and the Social Security office ain't never heard of them because you was getting all your money off the streets. You know, it puts you in a position where you're not able to sustain whatever blessings that they receive. You know,
or gifts, because everything you get is not a blessing.
That's true.
But yeah,
okay, I actually really like this point because I feel like it touches on exactly what's happening in the community right now, where we see a lot of kids conforming to what's cool instead of being who they are, because they've only seen one path. You know, like even when we look at social media, all of the people look the same. Like everybody looks the same. Everybody's doing the same thing. And so when kids think about what it means to be cool, what it means to be popping, they not seeing nobody be Christ-like. And this is why it's important to have role models.
And can I just jump in right there? And people, and what y'all see is not what's real, because behind closed doors, our favorite people are praying and asking God. Like, everything what's done in public is not what's always done in private. So your private life matters, but we got to get to a point where we can be authentic, meaning whatever we do in private, we should be able to do in public. But so the stigmas and the stereotype of how you should be is so prominent that we miss, like, oh, Cardi B pray, or G Herbo we pray. We miss that, the privacy of what they're doing in private, because it's so hidden and it's not cool. But that being Christ-like is cool. Like, Jesus was the coolest person that walked this earth. Like, in scripture, doesn't say it was like a cool wind. What? That is cool, right? So the authenticity of being who you are, both in private and in public.
Yes, and she just brought up something that we talked about in our previous episode, so I encourage y'all to go back and watch those. So a lot of times what we see young men and women don't see themselves reflected in healthy role models, so they default to what's visible. They conform to what's trending, what's praised, and what gets attention. And when you look out into the world right now and you see what gets attention, that's not what we want these kids conforming to. When you look on social media and you see what gets attention is half naked women. You know, it's men posted up with drug money. That's what gets attention, but that's not what we want for these kids. So what that means is, as the village, we're going to have to start taking our positions and showing them a different route to take if you're being led by Christ. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, like, you get, like, when you take position, and I'm not saying you gotta post on social media or do that, but we gotta attack the media, because that's where our youth is. Our youth is listening to podcasts, listening to music. We gotta attack the media just like the enemy is. We gotta transform the media so that they can see more of us and not of that, right? And then not just, like I said, private and public lifestyles. We got to have these conversations, and within our homes, we got to start speaking up and saying, this is right and this is wrong. This is what following Christ look like. We got to have those real conversations, and not just, oh, this is how, let's do it. What, you got to walk it like you talk it.
Okay. Yes. This is especially dangerous. This conforming to these identities and role models is especially dangerous when these youth begin performing versions of themselves that they don't really identify with, just to feel that they belong. And that's the struggle I feel like that comes with a lot of the violence. Like, it's a lot of kids right now who that's not their identity, but to feel like they belong because this who they hanging around, they gonna go do it. So we gotta show them a
And that's
different
not
path.
safe because that sets them up for violence, sexual abuse, molestation. It sets them up because they're trying to portray something, even with age. Some of I'll be like, hold on, you is too young to be doing like,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, like some of the things you hear and it's just like, wow, like you experiencing that. Something like me, my therapeutic mind always pops up when I hear young ladies saying inappropriate things. I'm like, I automatically, did somebody touch you? Did somebody hurt you? I automatically think that because like that is the path in which prostitutes and hoes happening. Like because of what they're seeing and they're trying to get something, and then also like the beauty standards and all these different things create negative role models because the kids that you are being a role model to have to be a role model for your kids later. This is generational effort, right? So how do you see your future? How do you see the future in general as a world, your community? Do you want it to always be filled with crime, hurt, pain, or do you want it to grow and be lavish and blossom? What do you want for your community? What do you want for yourself, right? Yeah. So you have to be that. You have to be that. You have to have the thought process, your cognitive behavior. What you think is what you become. If you think you're kings and queens, or do you think you hoes and prostitutes and pimps? Like you got to make sure you know that, because that's the division between violence and prevention of it, is knowing who you are and knowing how to shape the next generation by the actions and the choices that we take.
Yeah, you said something so heavy to me is that the kids that you're being a role model for are going to have to be role models for your kids one day. I don't think that a lot of people in the media think about that because they be like, oh, my kids ain't watching it. Yeah, but these kids that are watching it are going to be role models for your children. I don't think that they think about that.
Can I? Yes. Because it makes me think about the phrase kids having kids. And my friend always say, dang, we the new parents. And I be like, but how are we going to, and we always try to fight to be better than our old parents. But some of the things that I was raised by my grandma majority of the time, so I might be different than a lot of people. But because I had that role model to set rules and regulations and routines and family meals and things, that, and I said this on Facebook yesterday, is we need to bring back vacation and Bible study, because those are the places where I learned who my role models was. I learned how to dress appropriate and talk with confidence and look up to people. Those are the spaces in which was created for me, that I was able to have role models who were emotionally regulated and things of that nature. So we have to really be proactive when we set up our next generation, because kids are raising kids, and we so angry at the things our parents didn't. And this is real talk. Like, this is the touch my garment era right now. It's like we were so angry at our parents that we wanted to change how they did stuff because they whooped us. And you need discipline. Look at how the world is now that we lack discipline.
Yeah,
it's crazy. The more discipline we have, the straight and narrow we were.
Yes. I think that's such a heavy point because that, I literally feel like that is, we're experiencing the result of that generation. The generation who chose to forsake all of their parents' regulations and rules because they like, oh, I don't want my kid to grow up like that. And now these kids out here running crazy because we chose to like ignore that. And don't get me wrong, I think there were when I think about how the previous generation raised their kids, not the previous generation, maybe the generation before that, how they raised their kids, it was a lot more harsh, you know, like.
I mean, yes, maybe just a little. And I'm not saying can't get a DCFS call. I'm not saying that. I'm saying like discipline is seeking wisdom, being punctual and prepared, listening active, communicating effective. Those things are discipline. And my grandma had that. She had conversations with us and set us down, and there was love in that. I think there's a lot of lack of love that's happening, which causes abuse, right? So when you're not doing things out of love and out of service and out of growth, yes, you get chaos and you get, oh, I want to neglect what my parents did, but like look at that has happened to us. What has failed our community is the discipline. And in being a role model, like my grandma probably be like, I know you lying. Like I can hear her sometimes when like I make decisions, like I know you lying. Like you know what I'm saying? So it's always having that example of what was working and what didn't work. We got to go back to the blueprint and say what did work, right? And I'm not saying to structure your life based off of a generation, but cultivate, grow, make a combination of all these things to have a successful generation after us. And this I feel like we in repair mode. We just gotta repair some things to get back to that path of righteousness. Because it's some broken bridges and blocks.
As you say that, I'm thinking about how, the elder generations, they definitely grew up on the straight and narrow. And I think that the kids fought so hard to be able to do what they're doing now. They fought so hard to be able to have certain freedoms that are actually going to be the death of them. And like you said, we're in repair mode. There are things that, combination, it's going to be some things that were heavy, and kids not going to like the fact that certain times they don't get to have an opinion because I know what's best for you. You got to be quiet. Yeah. These kids ain't going to like that, but that's what's going to save them and get them back on that path. And closing out this point,
close this out. Spare the rod, spoil the child. Like,
what? No, say that one more time.
Spare the rod, spoil the child. Like that was something that was told all the time. You better whoop them kids.
Seriously, when kids grow up without that structure, it's not good, And let's go ahead and close this point out. Oftentimes violence becomes a costume. There are young boys out there who are pretending to be with that because that's who they're around, even if that's not them. It's a lot of young boys who I feel like had they been around the right people, they would have been in college right now playing sports, doing something positive with their life and pushing forward. But, sometimes it's just where they come from. And another thing that you notice is that toughness replaces vulnerability, image replaces integrity. And I feel like that speaks to the struggle of authenticity nowadays. Image replacing integrity. A lot of people will do things for the image, even if it forsakes their relationship with their self. And sometimes fear replaces respect, where in certain dynamics, it's more important that people feel like it's more important that other people fear them than to respect them. And so the dynamics that they choose are detrimental. And sometimes rebellion, their behaviors isn't always rebellion. Sometimes it's confusion. And that's the importance of role models, to clarify those paths.
Well, you have another one?
Oh, yes, we do.
Okay.
Let's keep going then. Repairing the incomplete identity. That is what I think this here is the most important part, because this is the charge to the people. How are we going to actually make a difference after we're acknowledging these problems? And one of the most important things that we talked about previously, we're kind of explaining how to put your finger on where kids are hurting. That's what the most important part of this podcast is. For us to prevent violence, we have to understand that it's coming from a place of pain, it's coming from a place of hurt. So putting your finger on it, and then we transition into how do we repair that. So repairing the incomplete identity and modeling Christ. For kids who grew up without consistent parental structure, identity often forms around survival, peer pressure, or normalized violence. Healing begins when a caring adult steps in as a consistent, faith-filled role model. This is where kids begin to become whole. We're repairing their wholeness and helping them to feel comfortable being children and being kids, and then showing them what it looks like as they navigate their growth. As you grow up, and eventually it's gonna be time to get your first car, your first apartment, and you got to think about school. Giving them a safe space to transition from the vulnerability in that safe space to say, well, I just graduated high school. I don't know what you're talking about. Car, credit score, slow down a minute. You want to be a safe space for these kids, because this is what's going to help prevent the violence. Is generally how I feel.
Can I add?
Yeah, jump in there.
Because I love how you said prepare, right, for the car. School doesn't teach that. Life does. Yes. Right? And I think we at a point where we rely on other people to raise our kids, and we forget that raising our kids is an everyday thing of like showing them the good, the bad, and the ugly. Not in the competency of how they can handle it, right? Like my grandma sat down and taught me when she was doing bills. I sat right there and I knew how to write a check in the 5th grade. Like I knew how to organize bills. I knew how to do it because those are where real world things were happening that I didn't learn at school. So education is also a key to being a role model, is being able to educate where the school system lacks. We have to pick up, whether you're a community member, a leader, a teacher, a pastor, a bishop, whatever you are, you pick up that education so they can learn the lively things of how to live life responsibly and have the knowledge of school books as well.
Exactly. That was really good. When we're showing up consistently as role models, your presence builds trust and be reliable even when it's hard. And in Luke chapter 15, this is modeled by the shepherd leaving the 99 to find the one. And this is be reliable even when it's hard. And for me, as I was working on this, what came up for me is this is a question that me and Kiki actually like. We tussle back and forth with this because sometimes we want to make choices that are convenient for us, but it might, and we have to really sit and pray about that. Like, am I getting ready to do what is easiest for me, best for me, most convenient for me? And is that going to jeopardize the people I serve? That's the question. Like, once you're stepping into leadership, it's not just about you because you're modeling a behavior for Christ. And so if God will leave the 99 to save the one, sometimes you're going to have to say, forget what I want.
And go get that one.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because I haven't thought about that. I have the shirt on today. I was called to serve. Like, literally, I have not thought about myself in ways of like, am I bending my back for something that's not going to benefit me? My benefits have been, I wouldn't say back burner, but my benefits comes with me serving. And I get more joy from it. And I see that what my works is not just my works, is God's works, and that work is going to bless my community. It's going to bless my church. It's going to bless my family if I keep doing my endurance is doing that. And I am called to serve, and my service is my love, and we have to do things in a posture of love.
Yes. And one thing I want to point out is that sometimes Kiki tells me like about her past life, and one thing you notice about her is that this is not the first stage. Like, where, how can I say this? Like, where the serving is where you get the joy. It takes perseverance to get to that point. And that's something that you definitely taught me. Like, persevering through the parts where it's like, hold on now, I don't know about all this. And then eventually, as you keep going, keep showing up, keep serving, keep being there for people, then you're going to get the joy out of it. It takes endurance to get to that part. At the beginning, I feel like it's going to be times and instances where you're like, I don't know about this. Like,
what? I know check at the end of this week. Like, what?
Like,
yeah.
And that's also something like, as we sit here, it's so many instances where I'm able to learn from her. And so as we all answer the calls that are being rung for us, you're helping everybody. Like, I just want to throw that out there. And so as we go ahead and close this part up, model a new way. That's what this is like most importantly about. Model a new way. Demonstrate patience, respect, integrity in everyday actions. And in Proverbs chapter 22, train up a child in the way that he should go, and he will not depart from it. Set loving boundaries. Structure isn't control, it's clarity. Teach that choices have consequences. And then even further, introduce Christ. Lead by example, not by lecture. Share your testimony, pray together, and show that transformation is possible through Christ. And in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. One thing I love about the Bible is that as you study it, God talks so much. Jesus speaks so much about the importance of the new creation. And I feel like that is where God gets the glory, from the fact that a person who knew you 5 years ago, 4 years ago, X amount of years ago,
3 months ago, 6 months ago, 7 months ago, like a week ago, right? God gets the glory from that.
Yeah.
Because
you look nothing like who you used to be.
Bishop preached that Sunday. He was like, I'm Pookie Tosi. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's so much power in the trials and tribulations that God gets the glory from that. Like, man. And boom. Like, I'm going to always speak gospel, because if it had not been for the Lord, but God that brought me through and through, I wouldn't be able to be a role model. I believe that you have to go through the storms and trials and tribulations to be able to stand and say that God did it. Like, you gotta meet him in the wilderness to praise him and give him the glory at the mountain. And you gotta go up and down. It's a journey until the end of the days. And with that journey, you learn that, you said it in the car, like, I'm meeting God in a different way now, right? He may have been a healer in this season, but in this season, he's clarity. And in this season, he's grace. And in this, so you meet him at different stages, because in that you go through the valley. You got to go through the valley. And that's part of being a role model. And don't be transparent. Don't hide the story, because a good role model know that it ain't always pretty.
And a good role model prepares you for those times. And as you talked about the up and down, I started to think about signs of life. Like, when you go to the hospital and they got that little thing on you, how you know a person is alive is that little And, you know, we run from that. And you know, something that I noticed about God on my walk with him is that before you are even fit for him to take you higher, he has to bring you low. And a lot of that, I don't want to diverge too far off the topic, but a lot of that is facing your own shadow. You know, he has to take you low to see the parts of yourself that everybody don't want to look at. And that's how, when you face those parts of yourself, then God can show you the parts of you that look like him. But moving on, you know, the high and low is how you know that you are living. That's how you know that God is getting the glory from you, because you are going high and low. You still breathing and you chugging through it. So some examples that I have here are Paul and Timothy. Paul mentored Timothy, guiding him spiritually, personally, and creating a new identity rooted in faith. You can find this in 2 Timothy chapter 1-2. And Jesus with the disciples is an example of this. He walked with them daily and taught by example. He shaped their hearts before sending them out. And overall, your takeaway here is that you can't rewrite the past. You know, it's kids out here who have been hurt. You know, they have not had people show up for them in the way that they should have been. They have not had shoulders to lean on, and you can't change that. But through consistent presence, through Christ-centered modeling, through patient mentorship, you can repair identity. You can replace normalized violence with purpose, and you can point them to God.
Oh, that's lovely. So with all that being said, we have a charge on this episode, and we're calling a fast. And this fast is the Esther fast. So we're doing 3 days. So starting tomorrow. But I wanted to say why fasting after this episode matters is a fast following this conversation is not about a religious performance. It's about realignment. Just like Esther, we fast to hear God's clarity. We fast to confront fear and honesty. We fast to release survival patterns. We fast to prepare our hearts before action. This fast invites us to ask, where have I been silent? Where have I been silenced out of fear instead of wisdom? Where have I reacted instead of prayed? Where is God calling me to show up differently? Fasting is not about starving a body, it's about feeding the spirit. Isaiah 58:6 says, "It is not this the kind of fasting I have chosen to loose the chains of injustice." So, as you continue to thrive and grow and become a role model, as we do this fast, our clarity is that we come out on the other side, that we can help our community more, that we can be role models and be the pillars of our community, and we can withstand the trials and tribulations that may come our way, that we can be examples, that we can set a new trend of just being better people and being better leaders and making sure that our kids see something different. instead of being angry and pausing and being like Esther, like death was on her total pole. Like they was trying to kill and deceive and jeopardize her community, but she said no. Let's see God, let's hear from him. So our charge is that you join us on this fast with us, that you read Esther, you dive deeper into what it's like to fast. If you have any questions or concerns or anything you want to ask us as you go through this, please like, subscribe, comment. We'll definitely be responsive as you watch this episode. If you have anything you need, we want to thank WVTC TV, New Gideon Missionary Baptist Church. We also have events coming up. Oh, we want a huge shout out to our Kingdom Kid, Katara. She got a 4.42 GPA. We are so proud of you. Keep going. Be the role model, because you are definitely exceeding and doing abundantly things. So we just shout out you. We also have our women's wellness event that's coming up Saturday, February 7th. Please, if you have not RSVP'd, if you not have let us know that you're coming, please let us know, because this event is going to set the tone for the year. We have food, nourishment, love, workshops, therapy, all those great things. So stop by. Not only that, we also have our Black History takeover service, where Trinity is going to be our keynote speaker. This is going to be an amazing Sunday service. It starts at 10:30 right at New Gideon Missionary Baptist Church, where our bishop is none other than Bishop O.C. Dockery. Please stop by. We have praise dancers, faith, family, and so much more. So please join us for these amazing events that's coming up. And we thank you for tuning in. And you want to give us our last reflection?
Let's do a last closing reflection to remind you guys that violence prevention doesn't start with punishment. It starts with presence. It starts with showing up. It starts with modeling another way. It starts with being the example someone needs to see. And if God consistently sent role models to guide his people, then maybe part of our charge today is being the role model we once needed. Because when the path changes, so does the outcome. That's what I got for y'all. Thank you guys so much for watching. Comment any questions that you have. We're responsive. We want to hear from y'all, and we cannot wait to see y'all next week.
Go to your Apple or Google Play Store and download the WVTC Gospel Radio app today. You can also say, Alexa, play WVTC Radio Skills.
Would you like to play WVTC Radio Network?
Absolutely. Download it today.
Views made on the preceding program are not those of WVTC Radio, iNetworks Communications, or their financial supporters.
Winning victory through Christ, WVTC Allsip Chicago, and iNetworks Communication Station.